Phillies are still playing. Yes, indeed, in case you forgot about them. Well, how many chances left do they have? Not too many. They're 4.5 back. They were off last night. They'll start a series with the Cubbies tonight. Frank Klose has his Phillies mailbag ready to go as people still wanting to know a couple of things about this team, Frank, as down the stretch they come. First off, what's your pet peeve? You have one?
I have too many. I like a lot of your traffic ones you were talking about. I just hate waiting at that left turn light, and then everybody is just kind of sitting there off in the middle of nowhere. So I'll go with that one for right now on the spot.
How about backing into a spot? Are you pro backing into a spot or against?
One of my best friends does it every single time. It drives me crazy.
Okay, so you don't like it?
I'm not a fan.
Good. All right, let's look at this Phillies team. 4.5 back, 2.5 for the wild card. Cubbies tonight. Down the stretch they come. Some good questions this week for the mailbag. Let's start off with a question from Michael. He wants to know, what's the plan with JT moving forward? Do they kind of do a 81-game catching plan for him? We've seen him play a lot of first base recently, obviously because Hoskins is hurt.
Yeah, so I think the question mentioned that Buster Posey was on an 81-game plan. That's actually more like a 100-game plan. Buster Posey is going to finish the year around 100 games. I don't think that the Phillies are at that point yet where it's that limited. I'm thinking more like 120. I think what needs to happen now, and it's very obvious after a few years of JT Realmuto sort of breaking down at the end, that he needs his days off. Kind of the idea when the Phillies gave him $23.1 million a year times 5 was that he was going to be durable and play more than other catchers. But it looks like his body is already not able to do that. So, I think it's very important for the longevity of him as the Phillies catcher that he gets his days off. He doesn't play any day games after night games. That's something he's done a lot when the Phillies felt like they needed a win. You'd have to use that. You have to use your judgment a little bit better on that. And, a lot of it could play into the fact that there might be a DH. And, Joe Girardi was very well known for, especially with his catchers, kind of mixing and matching and when the catcher would be a DH, when the catcher would be behind the plate, and also using that position for other players to sort of give them their rest too, and to try to keep everybody healthy. And that's something he did, and it worked with Jorge Posada back in the day, with the Yankees. So I could see something like that happening if there is a designated hitter. I keep saying if. We don't know for sure yet. I think we kind of think it's coming, but that could be the key to keeping Realmuto a little fresher going forward. I think they have to do it, Mike.
I'm so torn on that. Like, I hate the DH, but I know it will help this particular team. But it's like, I don't care. I don't want to help the particular team if it goes again. I just hate the DH. And the Phillies' problem is they have 4 DHs on this team. So we'll see what ends up happening there. I saw the piece, I think it was Mike Gill that did, about how bad the left side of their infield has been this particular season. And a question from Rich wants to know about that. Who do you see on the left side of the infield next year? Because this thing has been they have one of the least productive left side of the infields in all of baseball.
Yeah, in fact, that's exactly what I thought, is that he read Matt Gill's piece on The Athletic that prompted him to ask this question. But it's not going to be easy for this Phillies team to sort of rebuild that left side. In terms of prospects, Bryson Stott is their top prospect. However, Bryson Stott has not played at AAA yet. I don't think that means he's going to be a starter in the major leagues come next year. I think they're clearly trying to see some more from him. Didi Gregorius, you don't know how healthy he's going to be. I think that I've said to you before that the days that Didi is feeling good, he plays much, much better than the days where he's clearly bothered by that pseudo gout in his elbow. Now, is that something that's going to clean up, or is that something that's going to be lingering along the way? I think that's the big question here, but clearly Didi hasn't been good enough at the position, either at the bat or in the field. And then third base has just become a wasteland because Alec Boehm could not catch the ball at third base. And one of the real challenges the Phillies have right now, especially, is that since he went to AAA, he's barely played. And that's because he has a little bit of a hand injury, and Alec Boehm has not been able to show that he can get his glove going before this offseason. And so that's going to be a real problem for the Phillies. I think the Phillies need to bring somebody in from the outside of some sort. This is that big shortstop class out there that people have been talking about for many years, with the Trevor Stories and Carlos Correas and Javi Baez's of the world all hitting free agency, although Baez isn't that great with his glove. And also Chris Bryant's a name that's always coming up with the Phillies, and Certainly, he would love to play with his friend Bryce Harper, of course, if the deal is right. So, maybe they add one and then they try to use what they have to come up with the rest. I think it's important the Phillies bring Freddie Galvis back. He's been a little bit bothered still by that injury, and he's a little bit slower. I'm sure you've noticed if you've watched Freddie Galvis play, but he could be somebody that's a good backup to have around in case things don't go well. But I think this is a situation where not just the left side of the infield, but the entire middle to left side of this whole defense, the Phillies are going to have to basically rip it up and almost start over. They need a center fielder. They need a left fielder. They need a shortstop. They need a third baseman. There's going to be a lot of movement, I think, this offseason. I think Dave Dombrowski is going to take a step back and really see what's out there, what he can get and how he can get it, and just kind of go from there. I just think that this is going to be a very different offensive team heading into next year.
Yeah, that's interesting because Bohm, obviously, that would be terrible to say that he's already, do you think that they're ready to already close the book on him?
Well, here's the thing. I don't think they ever thought Alec Bohm was a long-term answer at third base to begin with. I think he came up in 2020. That was the best place to put him. And you kind of knew that Andrew McCutchen would be a free agent and left field might be available. But you try to get through a couple of years with him. Now, the first year, the small sample size, remember, he came up partially into that 60-game season. He looked okay for that small sample size. This year, clearly, he was not okay. In the same way that the Phillies, with the small sample size of Rhys Hoskins in left, thought it was a good idea to let him play left field. So they have to do something about that. I still personally think Alec Bohm could find himself in left field long term, but part of the problem is you haven't been able to see him down the stretch to really get a sense of what he is. Now, I think he remains a big prospect. Other teams would want him in trade if there's a trade to be made. But again, you're not looking to unload him. You're looking to take the value that he has and trade it for value that meets your needs a little bit better. Well, so I think anything's on the table.
Mike, Frank, Mike, I'm Mike, you're Frank. They need to then decide because what they did with Cody Ashley a couple of years ago, they went to spring training, played third base, and then they decide, you know what, we want you to play left field, and they sent him to the minors to go play left field. You got to make that decision. Almost now that decision has to be decided on. What do you want to do with him down the road?
Yeah, I think that's what they're trying to figure out. They're getting new baseball operations staff in here. In fact, I think that the reorganization of the front office is going to be like the reorganization of this Phillies defense. I think he's going to just, after evaluating this year, make some big changes. And I think anything's on the table right now, Mike.
All right, let's go to another big question that a lot of people keep asking. Chris wants to know, is Aaron Nola pitching his way into off-season trade talks?
So here's the thing about Aaron Nola. Clearly, he hasn't been what you've wanted, right? Remember, we've always asked the question, well, is he an ace? Is he not an ace? Well, I think that question is not being asked anymore because he hasn't performed anywhere close to an ace caliber pitcher. In fact, all these games that we're seeing, we're going into him saying, well, this is a big game for him to show that what he can do. This is a big game for him. This is the big game for him. And guess what? He's come up small rather regularly lately. In fact, just one game out of his last 8 starts. It was that game in San Diego where he gave up that home run to tie the game at the last possible minute with 8 2/3. That was his only time he pitched more than 5 1/3 innings over that span. And that the Phillies need better from that. Now, that said, he has value. Other teams would value him greatly. So if the Phillies are going to trade him, it can't be because they're just mad about this year and they have to trade him, right? I think if they're going to trade him, it's because, one, they get value in return, that somebody's prospects or whatever. Again, at the end of the offseason, Dave Dombrowski has to have the whole picture solved, right? So if he can get good value for Aaron Nola and at the same time replace Nola in the rotation, that's the key one, with an impact pitcher, well, if he can do that, good for him. Then maybe you do consider moving him because you brought in pieces and yet you've gotten another. But one of the other problems here is Zach Eflin might not be ready to start next season. If I'm the Phillies, I would try to add that Tyler Anderson that they almost traded for. If you remember that deal with the Pirates that fell apart, maybe get somebody like him that can sort of back up Eflin / be a 6 starter. He might be low cost, low years. So I think if you're going to trade Nola, you need to get 2 starters into this rotation. Ideally, one of them being more impact than not, and 2, of course, you're not dumping him. You need value in return.
All right, Frank, they start a series with the Cubs tonight, obviously 4.5 back. If they want to do something, JT said it the other night, we can't split series. We got to win them. We got to start winning series. Starts with the Cubs. They got the Orioles, the Pirates. They got teams that are very winnable, but that didn't seem to matter against the Colorado Rockies. Plus, they're going to go with a bullpen game again. You wrote about no Vince Velasquez. They designated him for assignment, so he is essentially out of their plan. So we'll see. Can they get themselves off the mat? 4.5 back. It seems to be a pretty daunting task as they start this series with the Cubs. So Frank's got the mailbag up at 97.3 ESPN.com. He's got more Phillies notes over there. Check that out on the final couple of weeks of the schedule. Read more at 97.3 ESPN.com. All right, Frank, we'll talk to you, pal.
Good to talk to you, Mike.
Don't back into any spots now for me, all right? I don't want you to be a hypocrite.